Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast, where we desire to take the conversation beyond Sunday. And so this one's a special episode. I feel like I say that almost every time, but this one we got myself. I'm Devin, and we've got Pastor Shreya. How you doing, Shreya?
I'm good.
Good. And the special reason of this episode is we got Rob Sandy joining us. Rob preached at C3. How you doing today, Rob?
Doing great. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Before we dive into our conversation discussion, take a look at this video. All right, guys, as we dive into the conversation, Shreya, what was the big idea? We're sort of this is Epiphany Sunday, actually, if what we last preached on, but what was the big idea for our churches and some of the scriptures you were in?
Yeah, this is the continuation, right? So last week was goodbye, and so we close out the year 2025 with a goodbye Sunday that looks a lot like celebrating what God's done, calling out the places we've seen Him work, reminding ourselves of the ways He's shown up. And so then this is the counterpart. We say hello to a brand new year, and with the idea that when we call out the ways that God's already shown up, it helps us trust Him for whatever's coming, for what's in front of us. And so that's where we were. That was our focus this Sunday. We were around tables again. I think I talked about this on the podcast last week, but these two Sundays, for us, we gather around tables and it's more reflective in those spaces. And so with that, we were still in a couple different spaces in the text. We started out in Jeremiah 31, which is really a reminder or a call out of the not yet and the promises of what is coming. And then, yeah, we were from the RCL, the Revised Common Lectionary. We were also in Ephesians 1 at the very end, but we spent some time in First Peter, which is kind of our verse, our space for this whole year, and really just the in all of those places reminders of what God has promised, both like in the not yet, what's coming. In First Peter 2, it's the promise of like we belong. We are now chosen. We belong to God. And then in Ephesians 1, the promise of like He's given us every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realm, and actually
Mhm.
those are protected promises and blessings that God's offered. And so, yeah, in a nutshell, that's where we were.
Yeah. Yeah, Rob, you and I were able to team preach at C3, and so we were also in First Peter chapter 2, and then landed in Second Corinthians 5. But you also brought in part of this, the Isaiah 43, verse 25, and just like the gets swept away and thinking about the new things coming into this year. Rob, one of the things I loved how you started this off, and I know you gave me a qualifier when you emailed me your notes, but like what makes a good church, right? And you even said on Sunday, like you're a dreamer by nature. You God gives you dreams, you dream dreams and ideas and all that. But share a little bit about like what God's been speaking into you. This like what makes a good church and the things that you've come through at C3 and otherwise, but in what you're hearing from God.
Well, yeah, thanks, Devin. And I think often we look at a church, our church, or other churches, and say, what do we like and what don't we like about it? And we tend to be more of consumerism of, well, I want things the way I like it,
Mhm.
and I think I was teaching today, and kids were talking about why do we have to go to school so early, and so
Aren't you asking the same thing though?
well, I do not like to get up in the morning for sure, but yet we look at things and it's through the lenses of what we want or what we don't want. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes we look at our church that way. And so to think about and to dream about what would we really like to have for our church, we can always come up with ideas.
Mhm.
And for myself, I like to come up with ideas, and they're not always good. But I mean, it's fun to dream, and it's fun to do those kinds of things. But I think with the dreaming, and with the kind of church that you want to fit into, I think the real key is um, we really need to seek in our own hearts. Um, the God of the universe to come in and touch us and to lead us. Um, and through that, we can see how we can be an active member of our church. We talked about the living stones, and I don't know. I wonder if that was a understandable concept,
Sure.
to people in our congregation. And I really believe strongly in that if we can begin to look at our church as I'm a part of this church. This is my church. I'm part of the foundation that strengthens this church. Um, I think we then can dream about that, what kind of church we want to have, and in essence of we're all in this together. It's
Mhm.
not like, well, this is my idea. It's no, we seek to have our ideas. We seek our ideas with God's, and of course through His leading, that is the key. And
Yeah.
how do you make this year? We often say, I believe that this is going to be a great year, but how can we make 2026 into a great year, and how can we really see God and see our church move in ways that we haven't seen it? For me as a dreamer, that excites me to no end, but still, you need the how to. And but
Mm.
but with that, I think it starts with each one of us seeking God and almost, recommitting our lives in the new year of 26 to make it happen for our church.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you hit it like we all have been wired a certain way and have giftings, right? And you even shared on Sunday like you dream dreams and have visions and ideas and thank God for Kelly, who is the being able to put the building blocks together. Like here's the steps and how we get there. And we do need people. We need each of us, and that's kind of how the living stones, like you had even mentioned, is just fitting together that when in and of ourselves, we've got some strengths and we've got some weaknesses, but together we fit together in this kind of way. God fits us together, like living stones being built into a spiritual house. That each one of us having gifts and being able to and experiences and be able to share those stories and utilize our strengths and giftings for the body. That's what is getting built into this spiritual house. And Shay, I know you guys are around tables for another Sunday and being able to share the stories of one's life and the collective story of your church and what God's been doing in and through. That's a powerful way for me that I see of like that's a visual of these stones fitting together that God fits together for a spiritual house.
Yeah, because I think, and whether it's around tables or in whatever way, a big piece of that is the recognition that like uh it is those people, it is those living stones that make up the church. And we get that so backwards, so often. But like, and because that's true, because it's the people and the stones and what you were just calling out, Devin, like uh our stories are different. The way we were wired and designed is different, which means when we come together, yeah, there's differences and uniqueness in the living stones, if you will, which means that any gathering or collection of those living stones is going to look a little bit different. And that's where I think, Rob, even what you're calling out of like this, how do we make 2026 a great year? And if we want to be specific, like how do we make this a great year for our church? And everybody's looking for the template or the manual, like just tell me what to do and like how do I run a church well? But each gathering or collection living stones that God's called together into the various churches are going to look different, and the way He's calling us to be His church in those specific cases are going to look different.
Mhm.
And so I think it's wise what you're calling out, Rob. Like, yeah, first we need to seek. We need to seek first. And that's an echo even of this weekend, even of Saturday for me. We got to spend I got to spend Saturday in the room with a bunch of teenagers. Our two churches together have just launched an integrated student leadership team, and so we've got high school students that went through a pretty rigorous process of like application and letter of intent, or
Letter
not
of
letter of intent,
interest.
letter of
Oh,
recommendation, and an interview process and all of that. Like our teenagers went through this process, and then now Saturday we got to kick that off and spend time in the room with these teenagers and do some discipleship and leadership training, but also give space to hear them kind of wrestle out some of this stuff we're even talking about at the youth group level. But really, it's that's a picture of the church. And some of what was the cool part for me was that by the end of our time, we spent most of the day together Saturday, and by the end of the time, what the teenagers were calling out was like, hey, I think we need to listen to God. Like before we, they had some ideas of different things we could do and ways we could change youth group here and there that were specific. But like the main call out was like, what's God saying? We need to be a youth group that listens for God, which was just a really cool thing to see teenagers get and call out.
yeah, yeah. And Rob, you don't know this, but maybe people came in and talked to you afterwards or sent you messages, but there are a number of people who have responded to the church and have been so um, blessed and are grateful for your words and for the message that spoke to their heart. It actually spoke to for them is some of what they were saying was it spoke to something I needed to hear this day.
Mhm.
That God had already planted a seed or was watering it, but what your voice and being able to share that to our C3 family was what was needed. Many were had been sharing with the church it was needed and grateful for your heart and words of encouragement, and also in spaces where heart was a hard word, right? Like it isn't some of what you shared is like this isn't all on the pastor or the pastoral staff, and it takes us. It takes us to be a part of being this spiritual house that we're living stones being formed together, that God has brought together, because those who have said yes, we want to be a part of this.
Yeah. I think a good example of that is the Summer Sports Jam, where, and it's kind of how we advertise, that, hey, all we need is a willing person and we can find a job for you because we have thousands, no, I only have hundreds of jobs to do. And this was really the first time for me last summer to see that,
Yeah,
just to see a lot of people I didn't know, but just were willing to say, "Hey, I'll help out."
yeah,
And that really is the attitude we need in our church if we want to see things happen.
yeah,
And Shay, you said it too, that it is backwards how we all kind of have a tendency to sit back and say, "Well, that's the pastor's job," and not see our part in that. So, um, you know, um, I just think that maybe around tables and in homes can be a real key, maybe is even more than maybe back in the 80s and 90s when I was a youth pastor and seeing those things happening. But to see, um, sometimes I wonder, what does the church really look like today? Is it focused around Sunday morning, or is it, what's the real calling card of our churches to um, uh, that people would want to come in? I mean, certainly our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is the direction, but what can we do to attract people to come in? What do they see in our churches? Do they see opportunities to meet others and sitting around tables and talk instead of just sit and listen? So there's just a lot of thoughts
yeah,
that come to my mind as I hear you guys talking.
yeah,
Yeah, and that was one of the things I think that was sticking out for me on Sunday was Because um, I think as a leader, as a pastor, sometimes I can get myself to a space where I'm thinking like, oh, the people, the congregation has this backwards, and they need to recognize exactly what you guys are calling out. Like Devin, you said that there was a little in some spaces it's a hard word, like this isn't all on the pastor and it isn't all on the staff. And that's true, but also I had this space on Sunday of recognizing that in some ways that's the structure or the tradition of what church looks like right now has perpetuated that. And in some ways, that's on us as a leader because I even found myself like I was recognizing on Sunday that there are some people who are ready for that. And like this played out essentially Sunday, I was more facilitating discussion around tables. And so I opened, with some scripture and kind of set the stage for that. But then I was going, offering a like, here's what we're going to talk about now. And then I was going to sit at a table and engage in conversation. And then I would come back up after a set amount of time. And I kept like trying to leave my table because like, hey, we need to get to the next thing. And like people around my table were like, well, also, and I just had this recognition of like, there are people, certainly not all of them, but there are people who are ready to engage in the wrestle, in the discussion of what it looks like to live a Jesus-shaped life and to be a Jesus-shaped church. Like there are people who are ready, and are we giving them space to have a voice, or are we just frustrated that they don't? And so there is some level of that too for me on in reflecting on Sunday was like, yeah, maybe some of that onus is on us and not allowing a space that says, come use your voice.
Hmm. Yeah. Which makes me think, Rob, of our conversation about what are the steps when you ask the question, like, what is it to be a C3, be a family on mission? And that's kind of where we ended on Sunday, were these opportunities of some ways to practically walk out being family on mission, whether it's small group or through a refresh group or otherwise connecting and serving. One of the big ways for me that we're entering into now is reading ahead through the scriptures that we'll be in the coming year, and reading the text, the scriptures, and lending your voice into the room around the table. What are you hearing from God for you and for C3? Because it matters then what you're hearing as your people are being invited and part of that, a part of that round table, part of those scriptures. And these are the scriptures we're preaching through even on Sundays now that we read a year ago, back when we did Read and Reflect 2026.
Yeah. No, I think the thought of 2026 can be exciting. The trouble with me as a dreamer is that I need people to come in and do the work, kind of a thing. Not that I'm not afraid to do that, but I give the example of when we were doing the Civil War reenactment, this dream of trying to get Civil War reenactors to come to Chehalis and put on battles. It was my wife, Kelly's, the one that she probably worked harder than anybody. She was out there helping parking cars, and we had a lot of people doing that, but she was the one that if there's any problems, you go to her. And
Mhm.
so she was just hopping. And what was I doing? I was teaching about a Civil War battle and then walk out and talk to some of the people that came for the day about what they're seeing and trying to wear my uniform and, just kind of enjoying the day and to look over at Kelly with sweat dripping off her face.
Yeah.
But that that has meant, the world to me to have
Yeah.
someone that I can dream and she'll help put this thing on. And so, in our church, we need all sorts of people.
You're right.
Uh, and we need the pastor, we need the teachers, we need the behind the scenes and so many people to help out to make things happen. And um, I'm just one in that cog of being part of the body of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. As we bring this episode to a close, let's share some kairos. What is it that you're hearing from God, and how is He inviting you to respond? I'll start first. Um, it's one of the things that you shared, Rob, in that you use the example of the Dust Bowl. And I know on Sunday you're like, I'm not saying that our church represents the Dust Bowl, but this idea of what was the response of the farmers to these different ways of helping to have sustainable farming, so that the topsoil wouldn't blow away when the winds came every year, and the response being like, it's not our problem, don't tell us what to do, is that there is something about the uh, wrestling with like ownership, responsibility, who's got a stake in this thing, church life, whatever, whatever we put our hands to. And I think the Kairos for me has been to reflect, where are there places that I have been unwilling to take responsibility and ownership. Like I don't have a stake in this thing. I'm gonna take. And I think this is probably an echo of like when we love something, we don't take from it. We care for it, right? There's this example, and Shay, remind me what I think this is from Practicing the Way when we talked about like different cities in the United States. They used LA as an example. Like LA is a pretty dirty city, and it's by nature those who live there are transient. They don't stay very long. There are fewer and fewer long-term residents of the city of LA, and so that went from this place where maybe a lot of people invested and wanted to have some really good things and have good communities and care for it, versus a place that just gets used up and what's left behind, right? And that for me was like, where do I is God inviting me to have a stake? You have a part to play. You have I'm putting here in this place, and so love it. Love where I place you. Love those who are in those places. And so I think that's part of the from what was going through my mind when the example of the Dust Bowl, and like, don't tell us what to do, we'll do what we want. And then like that didn't go well for my grandpa grew up in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl and had to move to Portland, because there was no crops. The farm was dead, and they packed everything up in their one car and they drove to Portland where the shipyards were going. So they moved to where there was work. It's why my family now, most of them reside in the Portland and Oregon area and not in Oklahoma. And
Wow.
it's like, well, so I think there's a sense for me in this Kairos that reflecting, where are those places that God has invited me? You have a stake in this. Love it. Love the people that are there. Care for them. Don't just use it and move on.
Mhm.
Sounds like Jeremiah 29, where God's like work for the prosperity and the peace of the place, even in exile, that I've
Yeah.
planted you,
Yeah.
and build the cities, plant the gardens, all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rob, what about you? What's God saying?
Well, I might throw you guys a curve here. There's something I wrote, kind of came to my mind. It was part of the message, but I think I talked too long, so I didn't want to continue on Sunday. But um, just the thought that, when you look at our body, um, you know, should we expect everyone to step in and to get involved and kind of kind of come with that air of belief as we go into 26? Or do we realize that maybe there are some people that just are not quite there? And the thought came to me that some people come to our church because they're so tired of struggling and and they just need rest. And you
Mm.
know what? Devin and Pastor Shay, I wish we could know those people. I remember when I was a youth pastor, I had a very good friend as a youth pastor here in Centralia, and he just really struggled in his church, and so he left the church and he started coming to our church. Now here's just a incredible guy that could do all sorts of things, but what he needed was rest.
Mm.
Yeah.
And he just sat there and he listened and just tried to kind of find out
Yeah.
who he was and his family and his wife and where would God take them from there. And of course he did. And but I think that if we could find out, certainly we're all about, we need people to be living stones and to build the foundation of our church and to be all in. But there's probably some that are hurting, and they hear a message like last Sunday and they think, well, I just don't think I have any energy to do any of that. I just want to rest. I want to learn more about God and find out for me what He has for me. And like I said, I wish we could find out those type of people so that we could just put our arms around them and say, "Why don't you just hang out with me, and we can just love on you, and let's get together for coffee, and um, let's get together for prayer and just kind of build them up." And maybe if it got to the point of, hey, let's make it a goal that by the summer, we can find a place for you to serve in this church, be a greeter or something like that, that you can start reaching out. But understand that it's okay to rest. It's okay to, you don't need to feel like, well, I guess I'm not as good of a Christian as I could be if I'm not serving. But to realize that resting's good in God, and that I wouldn't be surprised if there's a large chunk of people around us, Devin,
Yeah.
that feel that very way.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, what that sounds like, I don't know, Shay, if you went there, but Matthew 11 is come walk with me, learn these unforced rhythms of grace,
Mhm.
and be renewed by him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it's like a great I don't know, that's connected to the Kairos for me this week because it hit while I was up on the platform Sunday, as it often does. This idea, like we're talking so much about God's faithfulness as we look out towards this coming year, and we're talking about like and not just talking about how God's faithful, like, okay, we trust that you're faithful, God. We trust that you are a God who draws near and who will be close, but we're also praying for that in this year, right? It's the start of the year and we're praying like, God, would you lead us? Would you speak to us? Would you be near and be close? And this thought of like that's who God is actually. Like that is the character and nature of God. So not that it's wrong to pray those things, but that is actually who he is. That doesn't change. It hasn't changed. It's what we see in scripture. It's what we know to be true in our own stories. But there's an element of my faithfulness that has to exist. Like I have this sense of God, like, hey, I'll lead you. I'd love to lead you in and through 26, but I'm actually going to need you to follow me. I'm going to need you to listen and to be close. And that came on the heels of I mentioned like the day before being with these teenagers, and one of the teens at one point was like, I think I hear God saying, seek me. And as we were talking that out, I'm like, well, that's super cool. Like God's telling you seek, and what do you think that means? And he was like, well, I think I guess I need to do more. And we were able to kind of wrestle this out a little bit because I was like, okay, seek me sounds a lot like God. Do you think do more sounds a lot like God? And this teenager is processing this out, and he's like, well, no, actually, I think that sounds like me. And so we get to this place of like, uh, maybe God's just asking you to be with him. And the do more part that can come, that'll come out of whatever God might be saying. But maybe right now with seek me, that sounds like God's like, hey, would you just come near and be with me? And uh I think that's so true for all of us, especially at the top of a year. And even, you guys are talking a lot about what it looks like to be the church. And it's so easy to get caught up in like, what are the things we need to do to be a good Jesus follower or to be a good church? And I think what God's reminding me is like, actually seek me. Will
Mm.
you be so faithful to me? And sometimes I might ask you to do something, and sometimes I might ask you not to do something. But would you just be so faithful, like I've been faithful? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good Kairos.
That was a good Kairos.
Man, so good. Well, guys, thanks for listening in. Rob, thanks for joining this episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast. It's been great. Like I said on Sunday, I do so appreciate your faithfulness, steadfastness, and just leadership for our C3 family, and appreciate your insight and even challenge from today. Like there are those who would just need rest, and just be with me. So, guys, we look forward to this conversation again next week. And we hope and pray that your conversations are going beyond Sunday and hearing and listening to God's what He's stirring in your soul, and that maybe He's also got a word for you like, come and be with me. Come learn these unforced rhythms of grace. Take upon my yoke, for it's easy. And we give what we have, what we've been carrying to Him. So have a blessed week, guys.